you to agree as we go forward. So thank you, ladies, and over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Georgina. Thanks again for giving me the floor. Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone who's joined us right now. Again, I am glad to be part of this event today that brings together some excellent speakers and experts on gender and waste management. I hope that we can summarize the presentation as well. Okay, nice. So in 2018, after almost 1 year of our establishment as Women of Waste, at that time supported by ISWA, we decided to take on a global survey to map the status of women in the global waste management sector. It was the time that we were looking for data, and we find out that there is a gap in information. So we wanted, with this research, to showcase the magnitude and extent to which women are active in the waste sector. Furthermore, the aim of the survey was to give an inspiration and motivation to young women entering the sector. So let me quickly share with you a couple of points that emerged from that survey that was filled in by almost 800 responders. If we can change the slide, please. And was coming from 73 countries from around the globe. The survey revealed at that time that women are actually working across the waste hierarchy. We could find women working in landfills, recycling, prevention, collection, transportation, all across the waste hierarchy. However, we were able to find out that more than 50% of the women are preferring to work in waste recycling and waste prevention. That meaning working high in the waste hierarchy, and that was very encouraging because there we were able to understand that the contribution of women to establish a circular economy is very important at that days and in our days. Another interesting outcome was the high level of education of our responders at that time. It was great to see highly qualified women with many career options choosing to join the waste sector. Furthermore, the number of young new women to waste sector is seen very encouraging. 58% of the respondents were below the age of 14, and they were choosing it as both a career of choice, but also in providing new and innovative perspectives to tackle the waste issue faced at their countries. So this research showed that the waste sector has been providing high opportunities for women to build careers across the waste management hierarchy. From that time, since 2018, we have seen many global efforts trying to shed more light on women's working conditions in the waste sector, trying to define what are the main challenges that they're facing, all the opportunities that they are dealing with, and their contribution to global environmental problems such as plastic pollution and marine litter. However, our knowledge is still very limited. We need yet to do more research. We need to fill in this gap of information of our knowledge in order to bring up strategies in order to understand how to better empower women working in the waste management sector. And this is also in the informal sector and the formal sector. Therefore, this year, we have decided to expand our global survey, our first global survey, and expanding in terms of participants, but also in terms of geographies. Can we move to the next slide, please, as well? That would be nice, please. Okay, so with the aim to reach more participants, the goal now is to go to more than 1,000 women and to a wide variety of geographies. Therefore, we have translated this global survey. At the first part was only in English. The second part is also in Spanish and Portuguese. And we hope that the results can help identify any gaps, barriers, and priorities that need to be addressed. So far, we have reached 600 survey responses, hearing from women around the world, coming from Latin America, from Sri Lanka, and across Europe. And we hope that we will get this number together with you. So I encourage everyone to support the survey. and to share the survey link within the networks and organizations. I believe that the link is already at the chat box. You can take it from your chat box and share it with your networks, organizations, and please help us reach this target. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria. That was the perfect segue to kind of our next segment, which is talking about the importance of data in terms of affecting where we're going in the sector. And let me pause and just say that this survey that Maria talked about, this first WOW survey, was actually the first online survey of its kind, taking an assessment of what the status of women is on the professional side of the waste sector. And this type of data is critical because until we can make the business case for change and understand in real numbers where women are at different stages in the sector, we can't affect the type of policy change, the type of investments, the types of programming that we want to see. Which leads me to introducing our next two speakers, Malini Patel, who is a senior associate from Banyan Global, and Yeva. Gabriela, if you would like to introduce Yeva as well.
Thanks, Delilah. You're completely right with mentioning that we are having a big challenges and also changes in the last years. And I'm also glad to have with us for this segment, Mrs. Yeva Rufjeska from Great Arendal, Norway, and she will be presenting us a study on gender and waste. Back to you, Delilah.
Thanks, Gabriela. So starting with Malini, as I said, Malini is a senior associate with Banyan Global and is an expert in women's economic empowerment. And Malini and I had a chance to talk a little bit before the webinar, and really we decided to focus down on two particular issues that we thought would be most relevant for our audience today. Policy and how that leads to tangible implementation on the ground, as well as tools from women's economic empowerment and what we can learn from other sectors. As we know, there's been a lot of movement in the women's economic empowerment space recently. And despite the diversity among the sectors in which we're working, we find that there are a lot of learnings and a lot of tools that have already emerged out of this space, and Malini has been a champion actually in developing a lot of those tools here in the United States that can be applied across sectors. In short, there's no need to really reinvent the wheel when we know that women face similar obstacles, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in pay, whether it's relating to gender-based violence and security, whether it's health or policies that protect them in the workplace. Women face similar obstacles across sectors, and there's a lot of work that can be done, which we can leverage. So with that, I will turn to Malini, who has a great presentation for us today, is going to walk us through how we can look at some of these policies and how that transforms into tangible action, and what are some of the tools that she's been helping to develop that we can all use in our respective workplaces. Go ahead, Malini.
Thanks so much, Delilah, for setting that stage, and a really big congratulations to WOW and ISWA for the progress you've made on women's economic empowerment and gender equality. And of course, this celebration is an encouragement for everyone to keep pushing for women's roles within the waste sector. And of course, that will lead to better decision-making, more innovation in the sector that is needed to tackle our future as it relates to climate change. Next slide, please. I want to give you a sense of what's happening on the global commitment side. Of course, we've heard at the beginning of the hour about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the goals specifically around gender equality. But how is that translating into these other intergovernmental institutions? And I will go kind of through the global commitments and then a little bit more into what's happening in the US landscape. So you have a sense of the push that's really happening and how you can utilize that push to actually implement changes within the company or government or civil society that you represent. So I won't go through every single one of these points, but I want to start with a few. So for example, the African Union has a 2063 agenda really focused on full gender equality. They want to end violence and discrimination against women. They want to ensure that women have equality in decision-making roles. And they specifically pointed out the importance of women's access to property, to bank accounts, and to contracts. ASEAN, the Association for Southeast Asian Nations, has this year also signed a 2022 gender mainstreaming strategic framework. And they want to make sure there's long-term structural change in the economies of the Southeast Asian nations. In the G7 communique, there's about 4 things I want to point out that the G7 has called. So one, the trade ministers have really want to push to review trade policy to ensure that it supports women's economic empowerment. 2, there's a recognition of the importance of social protection systems and the critical role and incredible contributions of caregivers in societies. Often these caregivers are unpaid and often disproportionately women. And so the G7 economies have noted the importance of improving decent working conditions for these caregivers as part of the COVID-19 recovery plans. And that's an important factor to think about as we think about women in the workplace and unpaid labor burdens. Third, there is a recognition that citizens online and offline need to be protected, and that we need to tackle existing and emerging online forms of gender-based violence. And then finally, specific to the waste sector, is there is a call to ensure that gender equality is integrated into climate and environmental sectors, including waste, of course, and that we need to build a diverse and resilient science and research community, inclusive of all groups, including women. And then finally, I want to talk about the Gender Equality Forum. That forum brought together leaders from the private sector, from governments around the world, advocates, civil society. And the forum had a specific focus on women's economic justice. And there are 4 elements of women's economic justice that the Gender Equality Forum highlighted. 1, transforming the care economy. 2, ensuring decent work and employment in the formal and informal sectors. 3, access to control over productive assets and resources. And then finally, looking at the macroeconomic picture and ensuring that there are gender transformative economies. As I want to note, these global commitments apply to all sectors, and they're critically important in male-dominated sector like the waste sector. Next slide, please. So let me give you a little bit about the US context. I know we have an audience from around the world, and there are a few people from the US, but this is just a small case study. I'm sure you can think of the specific areas of progress in your own economies. And I'm hoping it's helpful to hear a little bit more about the US context over the last 5 years. So in 2017, the US incorporated gender equality into the national security strategy and specifically called out empowering women, ensuring equal treatment between men and women, and ensuring that women fully participate in civic and economic life. Shortly thereafter, the Women's Entrepreneurship and Economic Empowerment Act of 2018 was passed. And that act specifically directed the US Agency for International Development to ensure that all work conducted was based on a gender analysis. And that gender analysis should look to reduce gender disparities, eliminate gender-based violence, secure property rights and land tenure for women, and ensure that women fully exercise their rights within all parts of society. A year later, the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative was released out of the White House, and that looked to work with 10 US government agencies, specifically on women's economic empowerment, and looking at 3 specific areas: women in the workforce, women in entrepreneurship, and reducing the barriers in the enabling environment for women to participate in the economy. And through our own presidential transition, thankfully, the US government has continued to hold gender equality, women's economic empowerment central to its effort. In the new administration, the Executive Order 14020 was passed, which establishes a gender policy council within the executive office of the White House. And the role of that council is to advance gender equity and equality throughout all of the US government. And that council in 2021 created the first ever US national strategy on gender equity and equality. And that strategy has 10 strategic priorities. It includes women's economic security, ending gender-based violence, creating equal opportunity in education, mitigating and responding to climate change by making sure women are included, closing gaps in science, technology, and math education. Out of that national strategy, there's currently under development the first ever US strategy on women's economic security globally. And I think we're hoping that that strategy will come out in 2022. So as you can see, we have a global context, and for our national economy, we have a US context of how we can really apply these policies and some legislation and turn them into real action, and specifically, again, in the waste management and recycling sector. Next slide, please. This is a quote from the national strategy. I just want to point out a few parts of this quote, that the global economy cannot reach its full potential when half of the workforce is left behind, and that we need to end persistent gender discrimination and systemic barriers to full workforce participation. We need to invest and strengthen the care infrastructure that our economy depends on and promote financial inclusion and close the gender wealth gap. I want to note here specifically that WOW has made such incredible progress. And as we heard from our ISWA board members earlier in the hour, that we're seeing about 20% participation. Let's continue to push for that 50% participation, since women make up more than 50% of the population. And I want to turn it to Delilah, because we really worked together on a report that I'll highlight in our next slide, and make the tie with some other legislation that happened in the US, which really moved some of our work as it relates to ocean plastics. Delilah.
Thank you so much, Malini. That was an excellent summary of where we stand in terms of the policy framework here in the United States. And, you know, when we talk policy, it seems like that 30,000 feet up in the air topic for folks who are really on the ground and working with people and working around landfills and doing that kind of work. But the policy is so critical, because that policy empowers us to really leverage the type of change that we want to see when we're working in such a male-dominated sector like waste. Seeing this women's economic empowerment legislation actually gives us the power to press for the type of change that we want to see on the ground. So as you walk through, you know, the framework that you described, between the period of 2017 and 2020, we saw similar advancements in terms of the legal framework around waste. We saw the first earmark from Congress focusing on the mitigation of ocean plastic pollution. A year later, we saw the Save Our Seas Act in 2018. And then in 2022, the Save Our Seas Act 2.0 was further advanced, focusing on land-based sources of marine litter. So now we see the confluence of this women's economic empowerment policy together with the Save Our Seas policies, and that really gave a mandate to USAID to move forward with programs that invested in land-based sources of marine plastic pollution and how to integrate women's empowerment and gender equality and social inclusion across all aspects of that work. So again, the policy seems a little abstract, but it really translates into tangible change on the ground. So thanks, Malini, for pausing for that.
Thanks, Delilah, for making those connections. I think really important for the audience to know. And Delilah and I had the pleasure of working together on this first resource that you see on the list, which is the Women's Economic Empowerment Analysis of the Solid Waste Management and Recycling Sector Report. There's a full report as well as fact sheets that you can go to. It is still the first only global report in this sector, and there are plenty of recommendations in there for this audience to really take up and start making the change in the sector that's necessary. Again, back to better decision-making, more innovation, addressing and tackling climate change through this sector. And we know that's going to take some work. We know it's a male-dominated field, but this field will benefit in the long term with the inclusion of women. I also want to note two other resources here. The Clean Cities Blue Ocean is a USAID funded activity right now. That website will provide a lot of information about what's happening through that activity. And it was started in Asia, and now they're expanding into Latin America and Caribbean. And I think that will be useful for some of our audience members. And finally, our Women's Public Procurement Toolbox, which will also be in the chat for you to see. This toolbox, I think, is really useful for our government partners as well as our private sector companies. It's specifically for government procurement. However, like I said, private sector companies can really benefit. And it highlights what governments can do to ensure that their procurement is inclusive of women-owned businesses. So either directly to women-owned businesses or as subcontractors to larger contractors. There are case studies, there are tools, there are guidance. I think there are about 26 different documents that you can access to really ensure that women are included in procurement. It's trillions of dollars that are currently not going to women-owned businesses. And we know there are women-owned businesses within the waste sector. And we also know that municipalities and government procure a lot in this sector. So this is a huge opportunity. And thanks for putting that in the chat. Next slide, please. And finally, we don't want you to walk away without very specific actions that you can take as individuals within whatever role you're playing within the sector. There are some key principles. I won't go through all of them, but I will highlight a few. Again, these key principles apply across any sector, and again, specifically in male-dominated sectors like waste. So as I said, we need to remove systemic barriers. So understand what those systems are and what those systemic barriers are, because it's the systems that need to change. We talk about women changing, but really there are some systemic barriers that exist. One example is laws, and as Nancy mentioned at the beginning, that in Norway, the law was really helpful in terms of getting women on boards. But there are many other examples. There's a new Women Business in the Law report out for 2022. It just came out, and it highlights all of those barriers to women's full participation in the economy. So that's a good resource. Engaging men and boys. In male-dominated industries, you have to engage men. Men are in power, and there are men who are allies who want to see the systems change because they know it's better for the sector. So engage men in those conversations in systemic change, as well as within organizations, in ensuring that women have representation on boards, in key management positions, and as we mentioned in the G7 notes, that in the research community specifically, as you create new products, new services, new technology in this sector. And then finally, I want to mention walk the talk. We look at internal organizations. Well, how can you internally in your organizations make sure that you are promoting women's economic empowerment and gender equality, not just in your communications, but within your actual actions? I end with that, with a huge congratulations and celebration today on International Women's Day. And thank you so much to WOW and ISWA for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Malini, for that really robust presentation, for making the links for us between women's economic empowerment and waste management and recycling, all the amazing tools that we have at our disposal to apply in our sector. And I hope with that, the folks who are attending today will make use of the links that we've put on the screen, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions on how to access and use these materials in your work. With that, I will pass it over to you, Gabriela.
Thank you, Delilah. It was very interesting to hear about the global commitments promoting equality and education, gender equality, and giving women real opportunities, especially in this important day where we are celebrating the International Women's Day. And also how is the need to have a strong policy that supports gender inclusion in development and in the waste sector. We will have now more on this subject with our next guest. We have now with us Mrs. Eva Rufcheska, project manager from Grid Arendal, Norway, who will talk about how her organization started to work on gender and waste issues and the positive outcomes it can bring. Eva is going to give us an overview on a study they conducted in gender and waste nexus in countries in Asia, and also about a gender and development study in the face of climate change and how this is influencing policy development. Waste management is not only an essential utility, but it's also a sector full of opportunities, and there is the need to include women in the waste management sector at all levels. And for this, studies and data is necessary. Eva is unable to join us directly today, but we have pre-recorded a session with her presentation for you now. She will be with us to answer some questions at the end of her presentation. So if we have the presentation of Mrs. Eva Rufcheska, please.
So thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this very important webinar to celebrate International Women's Day. This webinar takes place at a time when our endless efforts to build democratic societies are undergoing some challenges. The ongoing war in Ukraine puts all of us in a different reality. But keeping all fears and anger aside, however, we celebrate our achievements. Either they are big or they are small, and no matter in which geographical zone we are in. My name is Eva Rufcheska, senior expert at Grid Arendal, and Grid Arendal is a small foundation located in Norway, and the aim of the foundation is to communicate environmental information. A Danish writer, Karen Blixen, in 1923, in a letter to her mother wrote, "I believe that good times for women are approaching, and the next 100 years will bring many wonderful opportunities. It will be so great that women are considered equal and the world will open up for them." This citation indicates the time needed to transfer to an inclusive and equal society. Here we are 100 years later. Indeed, the world has opened up. But at the same time, we have to admit and remind ourselves that we have some distance to go. It takes time and efforts to break bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, and it concerns all parts and all segments of society. Today we focus on waste management, and I would like to share with you an example about the transformation efforts from some Asian countries. In 2019, Grid Arendal, together with the United Nations Environmental Programme, International Environmental Technology Center, and partner organizations in Bhutan, Nepal, and Mongolia, carried out a study on gender mainstreaming in the waste sector in these respected countries. This work was part of a bigger project which aimed to reduce greenhouse gases and short-lived climate pollutants. One of the ultimate targets of the project was to advance on environmentally sound waste management, The report of Grid Arendal mapped out the gender patterns in each segment of the waste sector and pointed out at underlying challenges. In short, the report demonstrated that waste management is predominantly the responsibility of women at the household level, while man takes care over commercial sphere, dominate in institutional positions, and profitable part of informal sector. The success of this report was visible in follow-up national integrated waste management strategies in cases of Nepal and Bhutan. I'll pick up one of the examples in Nepal. Nepal's strategy sets 6 main objectives and activities for almost 3 decades to come, from 2020 to 2035. One of these 6 specifically focuses on gender mainstreaming. It aims to promote social justice and equality in waste management. The strategy objectives are substantiated with the action plan. For example, ensure gender and social groups are mainstreamed in all waste management activities. These are very important references and provide mandates for follow-up projects to build on. So whoever is going to start a waste management project in these 2 countries, they should feel strong and support by the government. I hope that this example inspires also other projects and other countries to integrate gender mainstreaming in their activities. Thank you very much. And for questions, please use my email and ask for the documentation.
Thank you, Eva, for this very relevant overview on your work and the study you have presented that surely are serving as a model for other projects in the field and have been useful also for the implementations and actions in the region. It's showing us how relevant it is to identify the challenges related to gender in order to have a real advance in development. It's also showing us the need to develop strategies and actions to facilitate the access to opportunities for women in the waste sector, opportunities to allow them to develop in their work with fair conditions and equality, and to provide women perspective in the future in the waste sector. So now we're going to take some minutes left to answer some of the questions from the chat. We can move and see. We also are going to share the studies of Eva Rufieska and Grid Arendal with all of you. So both the studies, the ones conducted in the countries in Asia, as well as the paper on gender and development, climate crisis, that was also a report also from Grid Arendal. So both of these studies we're going to share with you.
Yeah, great. It's really fantastic to see how you can go from this high-level policy, let's say, down to the project level. And now in the next segment, we would actually then show some of these activities at the very national level with our national members. So thank you very much, Delilah. Thank you very much, Gabriela and Malini and Yeva. Really, I mean, really powerful presentations. Thank you very much. Yeah, so let's have a nice chance now to see which activities are being done by our ISWA national members. It's a nice chance to put the spotlight on our group. Here we have from ISWA Mexico, one of our youngest national members reached out to Women of Waste in 2020, introduced us to Margot Sandoval, who was interested in supporting women in the waste sector in Mexico. And we're just delighted that ISWA Mexico was open and ready for such activities. I think that's already something to celebrate. But let's see if, Margot, you're joining us here. Let's hear a little bit about how you came to the waste sector overall.
Hi, Georgina, and thank you for this introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I remember when I was 5 years old and my dad taught me how to recycle. That was my first way to get into this field. And I was always wondering, where is all this going to? I mean, I used to think as a little girl that there was a huge bedroom in a remote place where the entire world disposed their waste. And it's funny, but I was a little girl then. But 15 years after, I studied international relations, and I still ask myself plenty of questions about waste management. Not the same questions, of course. I was still very interested, so I started to research more and more, and I decided I wanted to become a professional on waste management industry. And then I had the opportunity to start working in private companies on the waste sector. And I started to work in public institutions in sustainability projects. And then when I discovered the Women of Waste group of ISWA, I was fascinated. And I told the director of ISWA Mexico how beautiful it will be that we could join it. And 2 years later, here we are.
Well, that's a very nice compliment, but also for you, I mean, that's an unusual childhood dream, actually, that you managed to realize. Where does the waste go? I would say that it's kind of opposite to the typical out of sight, out of mind approach for many. I love that your father was teaching you recycling. I think that's something all parents could do more of. But yeah, you see, we have quite a diverse audience here today. I think it would be quite interesting to hear what it's like to be a woman in the waste sector in Mexico, actually.
I think that being a woman working in the waste management sector means to break with the idea that there are some spaces and labors where women shouldn't have presence. And I remember when I started to work in a waste management company at the beginning, and many clients were surprised because literally they told me, "Oh, wow, you're a very young woman." I was expecting an old man to come here to talk to me. And they didn't mean to be rude, but that makes clear that when it comes to waste, there is a preconception, and I believe it's amazing to break with those ideas.
I think many of us in the audience today would, yeah, that experience might resonate with some of us. But that's quite a bold vision you have. What are you doing at ISWA Mexico? What activities have you launched then to move towards this vision, actually, of women breaking through all these spaces?
Well, I'm very happy because I found a beautiful group of hardworking women, and we wanted to know who other women working on this sector, specifically in Mexico, are. So we are actually applying a survey, and we have more than 40 women that have answered it. So we have some results to share with you. It is so encouraging to talk about the presence that women are having in the waste management sector at this moment. In Mexico, we are seeing an increase of the number of young women choosing to work on this field, which means the future in the waste management sector is female. 10 years ago, that will be unimaginable. So 58% of surveyed declared their last level of education is bachelor's degree, and 25% declare they count with a master's degree. And that means an important ratio of women in the sector count with academic preparation. So we're not here only to get a job. We count with the training to occupy decision-making positions. And in fact, 64% of surveyed are at this moment performing as planning and management professionals in both private and public sector.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what I like, I mean, thank you so much for sharing your data with us. We've said from the beginning that data is really important to make the case. And it's exactly lining up to the experience we had with our global survey that young women with education are choosing a career in the waste management sector, and also what Nancy Strand, board member, said at the beginning as well. Yeah, super encouraging. Thank you so much for sharing this story. I really wish you good luck with ISWA Mexico. Hopefully it will inspire others in the region. I'm going to just ask, we have to jump now right across to the other side of the globe to Asia, but stay with us, Margot. Please, anybody, if you have any comments or questions, please pop them in the group. We're going over to Asia, to the other side of the end of the day, over to Rachel Churi, Ray, if I may prefer to call you. You are the Waste Management Association manager of WAM in Malaysia. Many of you maybe have attended the ISWA Congress in Malaysia 2018, and I have to thank you and your team for organizing such excellent coverage for waste, Women of Waste, when we were out there. So I was also then delighted to see that WAM organized its own online event in 2021, featuring 3 young female entrepreneurs in Kuala Lumpur, talking about their experiences. How did the event go? What was the response to such an event?
Thank you so much, George. I would just like to congratulate you guys for organizing such an event. And it's been a pleasure being part of WOW as well for me. And regarding the event, it went really well. We received positive feedback from the participants, from our speakers, as well as our board members as well. We realized something interesting in the waste sector in Malaysia, that many young women are getting more involved in the industry. So they've started a lot of small independent businesses, and they are getting very heavily involved in the waste sector as well. So for the first session, we targeted young professionals within the industry, and we had speakers who were entrepreneurs and young themselves to share their experience, and they were really generous when it came to sharing their information as well as experiences, and they were so enthusiastic. So overall, it went really well. And in fact, from that event, it sparked a conversation within our board members as well. And one of them, who is a lady, who actually approached me after the event to encourage me to do a next event targeting or having more senior women in the industry to speak and share their experience, and to encourage more women or more younger women to join and be part of the waste industry.
Yeah, that's really fantastic response, actually. And I like the idea that then there will be a follow-up event for more senior women. I'd be curious to know, actually, what age group diversity we have on this website. But it's definitely what's coming out of today's event is that there's definitely more younger women entering the sector and getting involved. I guess that's what you see there. Has it has an effect then? I mean, where are the women in general, would you say, in Malaysia?
Looking back, we do realize there is an increase also in terms of female membership in WAM. And what we noticed that a lot of women are actually leading consulting companies in Malaysia, as well as starting up a lot of small businesses or I would say eco-friendly businesses. So they don't really head major companies in Malaysia, but they tend to stay in the background a lot, and they are heavily involved in policy making as well as strategizing and planning when it comes to the waste industry.
That's really quite interesting to see it from that perspective, that women are leading at the consultancy level and having a big input in the policy and planning level, albeit not at the head of major companies. Well, it's super exciting to hear that this event of yours was well received, and I hope there will be following on activities in Malaysia. I realize we've actually reached our time limit today. So I am just going to ask our audience if we can just take another 8 minutes of your time, because I would love to include one more speaker. So hopefully everybody can stay with us for a bit longer. And Ray, too short, unfortunately, to talk to both of you, but stay with us. Any questions for Ray and how she organized it? Any suggestions? Also then for Margot, pop them in the chat. And then I would go right now over to Oman. And Oman, you have a big event coming up. Actually, maybe people are aware of that. You have your International Sustainability Resource and Technology Conference, but organized by BEA, which is an all one-stop encompassing municipal waste management company. Welcome to you, Kadia. Kadia Al-Hinai, you are a landfill operations manager. You are bucking the trend here since most of the younger women are joining at the top of the waste hierarchy. You have a small presentation for us today, and we'll be really interested to hear because BEA is doing a lot of activities for women. So I hand over to you and thank our audience for letting us squeeze in another few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, Georgina, how are you? Good morning and good afternoon to everyone around the world. I'm really very glad to be one of the speaker here today. Basically from Middle East, I can see only one female from Middle East. Yeah, that's well done from your side. I would like first to introduce myself. I'm Kadia Al-Hinai. I'm landfill operation manager, having master degree in construction management, bachelor in civil engineering. I've worked in BEA since 2013. Basically, BEA took the waste management from the government since 2009, from the government and from the from the municipality. So we become independent sector in waste management in terms of landfill operation, in terms of sustainability and recovery. Can we move to the second level? I took this opportunity today to show the Omani's celebration in waste management, and I tried to put some nice picture to show you what events that we take place in waste management. And basically, in the Women's Day, we celebrate 2 Women's Day, one International Women's Day, where we send graduation post, celebration post, but for the Omani Women's Day, which is on 17th October, we can say it is a rest day or it is a celebration day for our day off for the women, where we celebrate outdoor from the office. We all, women's, if it's from BEA or other companies, they gather one place, they have dinner, lunch, speak together. Women's as well, we develop the women's in terms of development program through third-party institution. We distribute gifts, and we share gifts on the Women's Day. We get a speech from our management level on the appreciation on women's effort in waste management. Because the management, they believe on women here in Oman, and as well, they believe that women play a big role in the committee. And at the same time, I can say that women in Oman is becoming in the lead stage. So can we move to the second slide? I would like to show some activities that took place within BEA. Can you move the second slide, please? If we see here, we have a women's development program, and we develop a book on how we develop the women's in our working area. Second slide, please. This is some kind of events where we gather and we do cook. And we do some arts, so to release the tension, the pressure during the working time. We saw that the next slide, please. We will see here in the next slide that we came to see that there is skills from the women. Some women, they ride the horse. Some women, they are artists, and we try to encourage this to the women, so they later on they come out to the public. Special our culture is little bit putting the women's in corner. No, but now things change, and I think that in future we will see women's in management level. Yeah, I think I have end here.
Yes, I'd love to. I know that there's one last slide, actually. Maybe we can go forward to that. I think these are wonderful activities. And Kadia, thank you so much. I think Bea is really a role model for other ISWA international national members. You're really looking after the staff there. How does that feel, actually, for you to be in an organization, to be so well supported?
Yeah, basically play a big role in developing women's skills in terms of their capability, their knowledge, and they believe, by the way, on women's. That's why we can see women's in West management in leadership level. So I think through having several training program to women's, and by giving them what we can say that by not differentiating between women's male and females, this encourage females to play a big role in the committee. And what I can say at the end, I think since in Middle East we don't see females in leader management or in high level, so by coming years we will see the growth or the difference in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite phenomenal, and I hope in some way challenges global perceptions of countries in the Middle East, actually. And I hope that we will stay in touch, because it'll be interesting to watch your journey as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will say we should wrap up, because we have gone over. Thank you so much to our audience for staying longer. Thank you so much to all of our national member representatives, Mexico, Oman, Malaysia. Really wonderful to show what's possible at the membership level, but also what a great journey we just saw from the highest level of international policy making right down to the initiatives by members of themselves. So I would like to invite my co-colleagues and my co-host to the screen. I think there's no time for anything else, but if anybody has any comments, please do add them. If anybody would like to reach out to WASTE, we are at wow@iswa.org. And there's no celebration complete without drinks and music. So we're going to have some music in a minute. I've got my nice bottle of bubbly, 0% alcohol, of course. Yes, let's get this celebration started. I'm wishing everybody cheers to you all. To all female waste managers wherever you are, and our male supporters, thank you so much, Maria, Delilah, Gabriella, to all our speakers, Malini, Yeva, where do we have you? It'd be great if we can just fill the screen up, and great to see so many great faces. Daniela, wonderful, and I think we have some music to celebrate with, and I'm happy to join some table dancing as we celebrate our progress so far and energize